Hi everyone, my name is Daniela Rodrigues.
And my name is Daniela Mendes, and we're going to present the chapter To Be Does Is Nothing, Macbeth and the Trials of a Dramatic Identity by Jamie Wells.
This chapter is part of the Shakespeare Criticism Volume 32. This edition published in 2008. To Be Does Is Nothing represents the first uncompromised thought we hear from the new king after he becomes. Um, the main point of this chapter is the paradox in Macbeth, dramatic identity of Macbeth, and fiction versus non-fiction. The paradoxes in Macbeth. So, the first paradox of character. From the moment he comes into contact with the wits and the processes, his paradox begins. Initially, it is the character or moral paradox. In it, Macbeth is torn between following a righteous path or surrender to greed. In this passage, Macbeth hesitates because he holds as Duncan's kinsman and his subject, as well as that of Holt, make him one who should against his mother shut the door. So in this passage we can see your contradiction. So another paradox is paradox of time. And ever since he heard the prophecies, he has experienced self-alienation. This alienation is due to the similar coincidence of temporally distinct selves. So Macbeth experiences two temporally distinct, the present self of kingship and the future self obliterated by the failure to produce a tender heir who might bear his memory. And in this passage, my thought, whose murder yet is but fantastical, shakes so my single state of man, that function is smothered in some eyes, and nothing is but what is not. So the author said this passage Macbeth articulates the experience of temporal self-displacement that results in the imaginary invasion of his future self or self as regicide. Lady Macbeth likewise shared her husband's temporal self-dislocation. When we saw her in the sleepwalking scene, where her existence is one of bodily dispossession. So, who would have thought the old man to have so much blood in him? Too bad, too bad. There's knocking at the gate. So, wherefore Macbeth the self is dislocated by the coincidence of present and future selves. For his wife, this dislocation force is a past version of herself which receives of over and over again the present, the particulars of her crime. So that the present for Lady Macbeth is a perpetual reiteration of the past. So in the paradox of agency, we have the combination in drama of the characters paradox in general and function paradox of time results in a paradox that is paramount for understanding Macbeth, the paradox of agency. When Macbeth learns prematurely of his fate, his resultant sense of divided selfhood and struggle with his own agency, with respect to fulfilling his fate he creates. So, um, in this passage, Come sailing night, scarf up the tender eye of peaceful day, and with thy blood and invisible hand, cancel and tear to pieces that great bond, which keeps me pale. So the author says that in this passage it is worth nothing that is conjuration of night, um, is itself indicative of the paradox of agency into which the play casts him. Although he encroaching darkness, the first murder speaks of at the beginning of the next scene makes it look as if Macbeth has some influence. But we know that night comes for nothing.
So let's talk about the dramatic identity of Macbeth. The main textual evidence of the chapter is to be does is nothing, but to be savely does. And this represents the present self and the future self of Macbeth. So the present self is the king, has position and power. And the future self is the forgotten king who will have no bloodline to continue his legacy. So Macbeth has this self-alienation that he did everything for nothing, becoming a regicide for so uh, that Banquo's sons could become kings. And so the main battle of Macbeth is to acquire, fix, and maintain the king's identity to be safe, to be safely does that. And what becomes a paradoxical nature, the more he works hard to accomplish, the more he makes it come to an end. So Macbeth has this psychic dissociation that to be a man means to have the courage to become a killer. So according to the author, Macbeth has identity problems from the very beginning, being noticed by Branco and Lady Macbeth. So where only the promise of being king in the future caused him to forget his present self, a man loyal to King Duncan, and to become a regicide. So Macbeth gets the sense of suspended self, which is when he no longer separates the king from the killer, as occurred at the banquet. So we have this quotation that is said by Lady Macbeth. My lord is often thus, and hath been from his youth. The fit is momentary. So Lady Macbeth tried to have excuse about the way that Macbeth uh, act in the banquet. So we notice how Macbeth has problems with his identity, how he's not um, knowing how to lead with that. Okay, so now let's talk about fiction and versus non-fiction. So, recognition mimesis in fiction. This is about the audience recognition in fiction that relating what you see for the first time with what you already know. So it's like an imitation game, a paradox of recognition and pleasures that fiction provides. So it's about bringing the audience closer to the play, association the characters' problems with personal experience, um, and forgetting about it's just a fiction. It's not the reality. So Aristotle explains that people enjoy viewing images, that observing them they get the chance to find out and to figure out what each thing is, such as that this figure is that person. Okay, so it's all about uh, this imitation game to see yourself into the characters, to see uh, your experience in the play performance to you. So it's about this relation between audience and the play.
In conclusion, the chapter discusses the paradox of character, time, and agency in relation to Macbeth's problematic identity, being always in a temporal self-displacement.
So the main textual evidence analyzed by the author show to us how Macbeth becomes more alienated in the idea of keeping himself as king, entering in the paradox that the more he does, the more he loses. So thank you for watching and bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.